5 o'clock. Told that the clock in the back is absolutely correct. This is wrong, right?
I was told the clock was correct.
This is wrong. Okay, I want to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Garcia's absence is noted. Councilmember Kennedy.
Here?
Councilmember Baez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McEachron.
Here.
Mayor Cox.
Here. The first item that we have is public comments on the council agenda. It's the last item, but we go into executive session, and if someone does show up at 5 o'clock, I have no cards indicating they want to present anything to the council. Does anybody want to approach the council under comments at this time?
My name is Jeffrey Dinser, Mayor Cox, and I've submitted a card with respect to an agenda item,
Okay.
public comments period.
Okay. At 6 o'clock, we will come out of executive session for the regular agenda, and we will hear your card will be presented at that time, and you'll have an opportunity to speak on that item.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, we have items for closed session.
Thank you, Mayor Cox. Yes, we have 5 items on closed session this evening. Item A is existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. It's the SEC litigation versus the City of Victorville. The parties and the case are set forth on the agenda. Item B, and that item is for the Airport Authority. There is a sister item to that on the City Council agenda, which is item B. Again, the case number and title is set forth on the agenda. We also have existing litigation, item C, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. That is San Bernardino Flood Control District versus Mimi Song et al.
Item C, I assume the city's named while we're discussing it.
The et al. Mimi Song, along with other entities, include the Victorville Water District, is named as a party to that litigation.
Thank you for the clarification.
And then item D is existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. Case title is entitled Max of California versus City of Victorville. That's case number 1410905. And lastly, we have existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1, and that is Shadowview Corporation versus City of Victorville. Again, all of the titles of the litigation are set forth on the agenda. To the extent there's reportable action, we will report it either at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the 6 o'clock meeting.
All right, at this time, if there are no questions from the City Council, we're going to recess at closed session at 5:03. And we will be back and we'll begin our regular council meeting at 6 o'clock. Thank you. I'll call the council meeting to order. It is 6 o'clock, August 5, 2014. Thank you very much, all those who are in attendance. And we just came from closed session. So from the city attorney, we'd like to have your analysis of the closed session and any announcements.
Thank you, Mayor Cox. We had 5 closed session items. They're all set forth on the agenda. All existing litigation in accordance with Government Code 54956.9 D1. The case names, the case titles are all set forth on the agenda. And at this point, there is no reportable action with respect to any of those items.
Okay. Any questions of the city attorney in regard to the closed session? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the city clerk call the roll call again, just so that we don't get ahead of ourselves.
Councilmember Garcia's absence is noted. Councilmember Kennedy?
Here.
Councilmember Vyas?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McEachran?
Here.
Mayor Cox?
Here. At this time, I'm going to ask Pastor Curtis Green of the Burning Bush Baptist Church to give the invocation. When we stand for that, please remain standing, and our police chief, Sam Lucia, will then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you would bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, we thank you for just another day, Lord, that we have not seen. Thank you for your grace and your mercy. Lord, your word says that we're to pray for those in authority over us, Lord God. So we pray for those from the federal level to the state level, all the way down to the local municipalities, Lord. We especially pray for these 5 council members that are here tonight, Lord God, that you would just continue to bless them and give them wisdom as they approach the city's business today, Lord. Bless their families. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Green. Thank you, Chief Lucia. At this time, I don't see any plaques, or we have no presentations, Madam Clerk?
No presentations.
Madam Clerk, please present the agenda and these revisions, and I have a table full, so if you would go over those, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, there are several revisions to tonight's agenda. They have been provided to the council and have been made available for the public's review. First one concerns agenda item A1, which is a request for continuance of the appeal hearing by Attorney Roger Diamond. The request is to continue to September 16th. Second one concerns agenda item A1. This is public comments in support of the revocation of the conditional use permit.
Wait. You said the second one is A1? I'm sorry. I thought you said the first one is A1, and then you said the second one, revision 2, is A1?
I'm reading them in a different order than what they're listed on the
I'm
sheet.
sorry. Go
I've
ahead.
combined them into items A and B.
Okay, my apologies. I will not interrupt.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead and finish. We'll have questions after.
Agenda item B1, there's a letter that's been received from the California Consumer Finance Association approving an extension of the urgency interim ordinance. Another one is concerning agenda item B1, and this is from the city attorney, evidence supporting extension on interim urgency ordinance number 2320. And there is a letter and exhibits that's been received this evening from Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher regarding the interim urgency ordinance, and it is in opposition to the extension. And those are all the revisions I have.
You get there was one other one for addendum item B1, the newspaper articles.
Yes, that was an addendum, so that was posted with the regular agenda last week.
All right, are there any questions of the clerk on the additional information, or the attorney on revisions and addendums? Hearing none? First item on the agenda that we're going to address is A1, and this is an appeal hearing, and this A1 in regard to purpose of hearing arguments for and against the appeal of the Planning Commission, that has been requested to be continued. Mr. Attorney, do we open this appeal hearing? Do we do anything? Or do we just continue it?
I would recommend opening the appeal hearing, taking any comments that are being submitted, and then continuing the item to a date. And I believe the request is to have it on the second meeting of September, which is
September 16th.
Even though we've had the request and no opposition to a continuance to the second meeting in September, which would be on the 16th, this is an appeal hearing, and at this time, are there any questions of the staff before I open the appeal hearing? Hearing none, are there any additions from staff or the attorney? Hearing none, I'm going to open the appeal hearing on A1. Appeal hearing called for the purpose of hearing arguments for and against the appeal of the Victorville Planning Commission's finding for consideration of revocation proceedings for PLN 14-0001 as set forth in resolution number 14-028. Mr. Attorney, no one is speaking on the item. I don't have any cards to speak on that.
I would then recommend a vote to
So
continue.
do we close the appeal hearing, or we just continue it so the appeal hearing is continued?
We leave it open and continue it to that date.
All right. Following the advice of the attorney, this is going to be left open. We'll just have a motion for the record on the continuance. So the chair's up for a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
Second item. Second item is B1, and this is the City Council of the City of Victorville. Public hearing called to hear arguments for and against approval of a 6-month extension for the urgency interim ordinances imposing a moratorium on permitting and zoning action relating to new money service businesses as set forth in Ordinance 2320. Are there any questions of the attorney or the staff before I open this? Are there any comments in regard to the information that's submitted? Hearing none, I'm going to open the public hearing on item B1, and at this time I have one card from Jeffrey Dinser. Come forth and address the City Council.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Cox and members of the City Council. My name is Jeffrey Dinser. I'm with the law firm of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher in Los Angeles, and I represent Title Max in connection with matter B1, which is before you, which is an extension of the moratorium for 6 months for your consideration. I'd like to make a few observations. First of all, I wanted to note I do very much appreciate the timeliness with which the council starts matters. Impeccable, 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock, right on the money. I wish that such attention to detail had been provided with respect to notice. We did not find out about this hearing until yesterday evening at approximately, for myself, about 9:40 in the evening. We were clearly identified as an interested party, as we have brought a case against the city concerning the original ordinance, and yet no one telephoned our office, no one sent us an email, no one sent us any information that this hearing was going to take place, and it makes it very difficult for us with less than 24 hours to prepare a response that affords us an opportunity to have complete and full due process, which I'm sure that this council appreciates the need for. Title Max should have every right, as does any citizen, to appear before the council and present a thoughtful and reasoned response to the motion before you. With respect to the record that has been presented, we have submitted correspondence, and I'm not going to repeat everything in there, but I would like to highlight a few points. First of all, the record before you is devoid of any evidence to support an urgency ordinance under the relevant government code section. Anecdotal evidence that was submitted by the city attorney, as I understand it, as an addendum to the motion, about robberies involving payday lenders throughout the United States over the past 5 years, I would submit to you is meaningless. First of all, we did a search today and found that there has never been, as far as we can tell, any robbery ever of a payday store ever in Victorville in its history. Second of all, Robberies take place in all kinds of businesses that would not be affected by this moratorium. I have presented to you evidence by way of newspaper reports of bank robberies, convenience store robberies, general merchandising and warehouse club robberies, motel robberies, and restaurant robberies that take place throughout the United States every single day. Most importantly, however, I would note that the payday robberies that are the subject of the city attorney's addendum are not relevant to my client's business. Payday stores have a volume of cash which they will provide to folks to offset. For example, if you want to come in and say, you know, I'm going to get my check, but I'm a few days short of that and I need some cash up front. So those payday stores have lots of cash. My client, which is an auto credit lender, does not maintain cash volumes because when they make a loan to someone, they do it with a check, with a cashier's check. So there's no risk that someone's going to come in there with a gun and say, we want all your money, because there isn't any money there. There's claims in the staff report that companies like TitleMax will hurt low-income folks in the community. And I want to spend a moment on that point. We do not believe that is true at all. First of all, there is no evidence that auto credit lenders drive out large institutional banks, which is one of the points that's made in your resolution. There are 3 Banks of America in Victorville. There are 2 Wells Fargos in Victorville, and there's 1 Chase Bank, which I note has been robbed several times, by the way. Those institutional lenders are not affected by businesses like the one that my client operates because they serve a different clientele. My client serves lower income folks who cannot access institutional banks. So what happens when you put up a moratorium on these types of businesses, recognizing that they already exist? You already just approved, in the city did, in April of this year, a fast auto lending operation in the city. So what happens when you put up a moratorium like this? Well, as the folks at the California Consumer Finance Association wrote to you in June, what you do is you eliminate all of the competition. So it drives actually the rates of the loans for low-income folks up. It hurts the community. It doesn't help them. Let the free market press the rates down. That's the whole point. And my client's presence here will do exactly that. It will make cash available to folks who can't afford to deal with institutional banks less expensive, not more expensive. And we know this because Mr. Silverman, who wrote emails, and I know you're familiar with the emails, was encouraging the staff not to allow my client or other businesses like my client into the community. Well, why would Mr. Silverman care about that? He operates a payday store right next door to where we want to locate. Well, of course, the reason Mr. Silverman doesn't want our business there is because he's concerned that we are going to be competition for him. And competition is a good thing in this business because it helps the consumer. Moreover, these auto credit lenders, all right, there are a couple things that you should know. They provide a service to low-income folks that makes cash available to them so that they don't have to write bad checks, get into problems with the district attorney's office, and have bad credit. They make cash available for folks so that they don't have to pay enormous penalties. They make cash available so that they can avoid foreclosure on their cars, repossession of their cars, and their mortgages, their home mortgages. One of the things that my client insists upon before it will make a loan is that the borrower shows that it has income, has a job, so that these loans are not going to be made to people who cannot pay them back. We don't want the title to the car. We want our money back, and we want to make a reasonable rate of return on that money. That's what the business we're into. And finally, I would just like to raise a procedural issue. It's noted in the materials that were prepared in connection with this resolution that there's compliance with a government code section 65858 subsection D, as in dog. And that provision provides that a report must be presented to the City Council 10 days before the expiration of any interim ordinance or any extension that describes the measures taken to alleviate the condition which led to the adoption of the ordinance in the first instance. Now, your council, I believe, is going to try and tell you that that report isn't due until January, but I would submit to you that that will be legal error, because the code section is very clear, and it says that report has to be prepared 10 days in advance of the interim ordinance or any extension of the ordinance, which is what you're contemplating to do now. No such report has been prepared. No such report has been submitted to the council, which will make this ordinance, if it's adopted, voided. I realize that there is a concern that the types of lenders that like my client are going to have a negative effect on this community. I would submit to you that we will not have a negative effect on the community, that the lenders who provide the best service at the lowest rates are the ones that will survive, and the ones that do not will not. And I would take any questions at this time. Otherwise, I'll submit this matter, and I thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. Any questions or clarifications to this individual? Seeing none?
Can you comment on the special report?
We believe we are in compliance with the statutes.
Posting our agenda, 72 hours according to law.
Yes, the Thursday prior to the meeting.
Do we customarily call everybody we think might be interested in what's on the agenda, let them know it's going to be on
Those who have requested notice are on a distribution list.
Questions of staff? Any other questions of the attorney from council members?
Have you closed the public hearing yet?
I have not.
Okay.
Giving everyone ample opportunity to be heard. We have a lot of information that we have gone through. I want to make sure that if there are any questions of staff or the council in regard to this issue, that they get on the record. Part of the public hearing process. If we have no questions, do we have any comments from staff or the attorney? If we don't, I'm going to close the public hearing, and then you can address the council on an item. But I want everything in the public hearing that needs to be in the public hearing, and everybody who has a right to have their message in the public hearing to be heard and have input. So,
As
Mayor, I have a comment to make, but if I was going to wait till after the public hearing was closed. If you'd prefer it to occur before, I can do that, no
I
problem.
want to make sure that there's no questions, that everyone had a voice in this. There can be questions on the staff after the close of the public hearing for clarification. I understand. Mr. Attorney?
There can be questions of staff, certainly, and we can submit some more information in connection with the public hearing before it's closed. And if you'd like to have Mr. Robertson add his information, and then I might add some information as well.
Okay. Public hearing is still open. City Manager, you had a comment or a question?
Just wanted to bring it to the council's attention. I know you got about an inch worth of documents in front of you. One of the documents that I found interesting as Mr. Denser was speaking, he referenced, assuming it was some letter of opposition from the California Consumer Finance Association. I'm not familiar with that letter, but it sounded like it was a letter of opposition. You actually received today, and it's on the dais, another letter from the California Consumer Finance Association that specifically says Cal CFA agrees that an extension of the temporary moratorium is necessary to give staff and council members an opportunity to consult with interested parties, hold public hearings, and prepare draft regulations. So that association is essentially recommending the extension of the moratorium for the 6 months so that it can be appropriately studied.
Do I understand correctly that the association that governs this type of financial institution is suggesting that we do grant the moratorium so that we can study it?
I wouldn't say governs. It's a trade association that payday lenders, payday loan type of businesses belong to. It's the same association Mr. Dentzer referenced earlier tonight.
So they're suggesting that we continue to study this and go forward with the 6-month moratorium.
That's correct. So that they and others can provide the staff and council with additional information so that you can make an informed decision at the appropriate time.
Amazing.
For the record, that's submitted by Natasha Fuman, President, California Consumers Finance Association. And I just received this when I came in the meeting tonight and had a chance to read it just before the meeting. When did we actually receive it?
It was this afternoon via
Okay.
email.
All right.
Mayor Cox, in addition, you have 10 additional documents submitted that are part of your agenda. These are documents that we believe support findings and determinations that you will be making in connection with the ordinance, supporting the extension of the interim ordinance. They are, and I'll just briefly mention them, California Department of Business Oversight Annual Report, entitled Operation of Finance Companies Licensed under the California Finance Lenders Law, Bank Secrecy Act, Anti-Money Laundering Examination Manual for Money Services Business, a frequently asked questions conducting independent reviews of money services, money service businesses, anti-money laundering programs. 4 is answers to frequently asked questions for money service businesses. Item number 5 is Department of Justice regulations for the check cashier's permit program. Item 6 is California Civil Code, Section 1789.30, 1789.388. A money service business web pages, a check cashing permit program document, a Why Title Loans Are a Bad Idea document submitted by Christopher Niga, and a Consumer Lending and California Financial Lenders Law document from the Department of Business and Oversight. Those documents have all been provided to the council members. Those should be considered by you in connection with your consideration of the ordinance as well.
If there are no other comments, is there any additional information to enter into the record before I close the hearing? Will we receive a packet of information?
That was previously referenced. There's a packet of information from Mr. Dinster and the Gibson Dunn Crutch Law Firm. That's included as part of the
I was
record.
trying to read that, but it's very extensive, and I hadn't seen it before tonight. Is that information to be entered into the record?
That will be entered as part of the record,
hearing
yes.
process? All right. So be it. At this point in time, there's no further questions, any comments from the council or the attorney or the council members in regard to the record for the public hearing process. If not, I'm going to assume everyone has had their say. I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. The action, as you have seen the volume of information in front of you and the presentation, is a recommendation from staff. The attorney has, our city attorney has issued his opinion on the legality of that recommendation to adopt for the extension of the inter-emergency ordinance. And we have heard from Mr. Dinser, Jeffrey Dinser, representing Gibson Dunn on behalf of the client, opposing that this should not be done and that he believes the evidence does not allow the council to. So you have that information. You have massive information in front of you. Are there any questions to the chair or to staff? If not,
Mayor Cox, I would want to supplement to make it clear that the evidence that you are considering in connection with the consideration of this ordinance includes all of the documentation I previously recited as part of the public hearing. Those documents, in addition, your findings and determinations should be based on that evidence. In addition, I do want to point out that the city staff has been made aware of at least potential applications by 3 other similar type institutions, creating a concern by staff that there will be a proliferation of these types of uses in a very small area of the city, namely the 7th Street, Old Town, downtown area. And that is a significant concern we believe affects the health, safety, and welfare and needs your consideration in connection with in connection with the consideration of this ordinance.
Any comments or questions from the council to the city attorney in regard to his comments?
I would just say one thing. Most of the evidence that has come to the council is clearly in opposition to these enterprises. The attorney makes, I think, a persuasive argument to me and anybody in business that competition tends to be beneficial to the consumer. That's a powerful argument. I think this really makes the case that we need to study this, because I think there are two very solid points of view, and I think we need to thoroughly see both of them. So I think extending this 6 months makes the most sense.
Any further comments from council members? If not, the chair is ready for a motion in regard to this. The public hearing is closed. We've considered all the evidence that have been submitted.
Mayor Cox, I need to read the title of the ordinance.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yes.
Ordinance 2320, extension of the urgency interim ordinance of the City Council of the City of Victorville imposing a moratorium on permitting and zoning action related to new money service businesses. Motion by Councilmember Vyas, second by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron to waive further reading and adopt the extension of the urgency interim ordinance. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
For the record, Mr. Attorney, this is an interim ordinance, and we'll be considering information, I suppose, from the consumer, California Consumer Finance, as well as possibly other individuals that have an interest in this item. This interim ordinance, if it leads to adoption of an ordinance, pro or con, that is another public hearing process.
That is correct. What we are hoping is that, the staff will have the time to study this with input from the community, from businesses, et cetera, and to the extent with your direction they deem it appropriate, they could leave the current zoning code the way it is, or they could suggest amendments of the zoning code to allow for locations of these types of uses, either in specific areas of the city, anywhere in the city. So it just gives you the time to study the uses, address the concerns that have been raised with respect to these uses, and then determine what the best course of action is, whether or not you need to do anything more to your current development code or not.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is the consent calendar. Consent calendar is on the agenda for those following it, C1 through C18. Is there any reason to pull any item from the consent calendar? Are there any conflicts for any of the council members in regard to the consent calendar? If not, a motion will be in order.
Motion by Councilmember Vyas, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
Next item is item D1, which is the written communications. Comments of staff? Any questions of staff? Motion and a second.
Motion by Councilmember Vyas, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
D2, approval of an amendment number 1 to General Service Provider Agreement with Marine Diving Solutions, LLC for cleaning and tank inspections project CC 14-060. After going over the agenda, I asked the city manager a question on this item. Do you have a response, Mr.?
I do, actually, and I have to apologize. I mistakenly led you astray on this when I attempted to answer it. This is not actually purchasing a dive suit for city employees. This is a service that comes out and does the diving. Our Public Works Director can provide more information about this service, but in talking with him as well as one of the water managers earlier today, I found out that this has been the standard way of doing this inspection and even repair service for about 20 years now, that draining the tanks, as you suggested, creates the potential for a dangerous situation regarding fire flows and other things. So The tanks are typically cleaned out while they're full of water in a very safe manner, and that's the industry standard at this point. Apparently, the Victorville Water District has been doing it since its inception in 2007. Victor Valley Water District since about the year 2000. Before that,
I did raise the question, why didn't they just drain the tank? And you have the answer, but since we're not pumping out of all of these now, we're using whatever they call that, our cube project.
our cube.
And therefore, it wouldn't appear that these areas critical. Have they considered draining the tank and saving us?
You actually still use the tanks with the R-cube process. It's the wells that you don't use. You still need to store it so that you get the head pressure and have that immediate fire flow, immediate water flow in times of a surge.
Just trying to save money, so maybe the police department can get a little more dollar for the next year. Okay.
And we appreciate it. We try as well.
I know you do. Okay, we're open for a motion and a second on this item.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Baez. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
Item number 3, Amendment 2 to General Service Provider Agreement with Hairsteel Fence Company for installation and repair fencing at SCLA. It indicates that staff request an additional appropriation in said amount, but from what account?
Mr. Mayor, this is an account that's reflecting off-airport operations, so it's what we would typically refer to as B&D, so it's revenues generated from the outside the fence properties.
And there is
Any additional appropriation would come from unallocated fund balance. If it's
okay.
from an account, then you wouldn't need the additional appropriation.
Okay. Thank you.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron, second by Councilmember Baez. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
Item number 4, Amendment 2 to General Service Provider Agreement for ILS, AWS, DME, I don't know what all that is, maintenance project, but it has to do with the Logistics Airport Authority and the tower, and I've been through this. Any questions of staff? If not, it's a $77,000 item.
Motion by Councilmember Baez, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
Agenda item number 5, appointment of council members to the focus group. We have been looking at this item the council has been looking at this item with the Planning Commission, with members of the community and other interested parties for some time. And it was kind of determined at the joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the council that in order to look at the design guidelines and the development standards and lot sizes, and people keep forgetting that lot sizes is just a small portion of this, that there ought to be adequate input from everyone, and so therefore the suggestion, do we have 2 volunteers from the council members to be on this focus group? If we don't have volunteers, do you want to appoint someone? We have 1 volunteer, Councilmember McEachron, Mayor Pro Tem.
I was just suggesting Councilmember Baez might be interested in doing it if she'd commit to stay on it after she leaves the council, because she's not running.
My concern is that if we appoint a council member, and the minute she's not a council member, she automatically vacates the seat.
That would be correct.
Okay, that's what
But could she work on that? She has a lot of interest in it.
well, certainly, yeah, she could set out a
Could she continue
detail.
to serve it?
And then the city council could, at that point, reappoint another member. Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, one tweak that I made from the suggestion that came out of that meeting was, rather than forming a committee, which is more official, and you have voting members, potentially non-voting members, and there was some concerns raised about, you have 2 of these, 2 of those, 2 developers, now you need 2 members of the public to balance the developers. The purpose of the group, in my opinion, should be, and the reason I termed it a focus group is because the purpose is to find consensus, not to vote on anything. Ultimately, I suppose you could have something come up for a vote, but the point is to try to find consensus amongst all the interested parties and take that consensus to the Planning Commission. And that reduces the potential impact if there's multiple developers, multiple citizens, multiple anything. You don't have to try to create a, quote, balanced committee, because simply everyone is providing input to the extent that they are able. So that, with that in mind, should Councilmember Baez be interested, that could pave the way for exactly that, that she could stay on the focus group should she choose to, assuming she doesn't run for re-election, doesn't file by Friday.
I'm afraid that this whole lot sizes thing is going to get me so mad that I'm going to change my mind and run. So I don't know if I should do this.
I got 2 days. Well, if she doesn't want to do it, I'll do it. I don't know if Gloria might be interested in doing it.
Would it be appropriate, it seemed like to me, if we have 2 members, there ought to be an alternate? Ought to be, I mean, just safely, so if they schedule the meetings, that we ensure that we have 2 council members there. And with that in mind, Mayor Pro Tem McEachron, Councilmember Garcia is not here, and we can't actually put her on there, I guess, so it wouldn't be fair. But if you would be the alternate, and then we would appoint a listed member. Okay, do we need a motion?
So move.
You don't have an alternate, so we have to do it
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron.
Just for the record, because the mayor kind of backed away from his mic a little bit, I didn't hear the names exactly.
1, 2, alternate.
Okay. Ekron and Baez are on the committee, and Ms. Kennedy is...
Councilmember Vyas is the appointee, and Councilmember Kennedy is the alternate if she can't make it. I know she has a very busy schedule, but we ought to have always 2 members there when the Planning Commission meets or when the focus group meets, and that is acceptable to everyone. And thank you for that. I was scared to death somebody was going to ask me to do it. Agenda item number 7, request to award a contract to ABB Inc. in care of Pacific Utilities for the purchase of a 10...
Mayor, you missed one.
Well, it must not be that important. Oh, I'm sorry. It is important. Selection of council members to meet with Fair Board members. Sorry. It is important.
I nominate our mayor for this one.
More than happy. More than
You wanna
happy.
do it? Because I'll volunteer if you don't want to do it.
No, I definitely want to do this one.
Councilmember Vyas? And I will be more than happy.
Want a motion?
Please.
Oh, you beat me to it.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron, second by Councilmember Kennedy.
Our mayor seems so disappointed he didn't get appointed to the last committee. I wanted to make sure
Yes.
that you
Got to
got
have
appointed to
balance
this one.
around here.
Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
I don't recall a committee having that many volunteers that quickly
Yeah.
before. That might be a new record.
7, request to award a contract for that 10 megawatt substation transformer. Very expensive, but I talked to staff, absolutely necessary. And no questions? Can we have a motion?
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron, second by Councilmember Baez. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
Mayor, I'm going to abstain on agenda item 8 as Mimi Song's a client of my insurance firm.
This is an item that we had on the discussion of the council for settlement, consideration of the settlement agreement by and between San Bernardino County Flood Control District and the Victorville Water District, settling the matter of San Bernardino County Flood Control District versus Mimi Song et al. Case number, so I'll not read the whole case, which is eminent domain case. The city attorney and the director of public works, and I assume the city engineer, all recommend settlement primarily to the county. We become a party to it. Are there any questions of staff in regard to this item, item number 8? If there are no questions, we're ready for a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Baez, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem McEachron and Councilmember Garcia absent.
Ask Mr. McEachron to step back in. Next item, agenda item 9, amendment 2 to general service provider agreement for statutory equipment fire pumps at SCLA, project BM 12-028. Amount of $88,640, not to exceed that $88,640. Questions of staff? There are no questions. We have a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Baez, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries with Councilmember Garcia absent.
Item number 9, this is the Consultant Professional Service Provider Agreement by and between Southern California Logistics Airport and Nino and Moore Geotechnical and Environmental Science Consultants. Additional appropriation in the amount not to exceed $70,000.
Mayor Cox, just for clarification, this is item 10, D10.
Item. Well, I'm getting tired. I'm on item 10 myself. I'm sorry. It's item 10. Item 10. Sorry about that. Okay. No questions?
Motion by Councilmember Baez, second by Mayor Pro Tem McEachron.
That concludes that portion of the agenda.
Mayor Cox, excuse me, can you vote on that item, please?
Okay, I didn't vote
Thank
twice.
you.
Just for
Motion carries with
clarification.
Councilmember Garcia absent.
Item 10 concludes those items on that agenda. The next item on the agenda is public comments on items of interest to the public.
Mayor, we do have one more item, number 11.
I don't have an 11 on mine. Oh, we have, okay. Item 11, sorry about that. Then we'll get to the public session. Presentation of Omnivore Biogas to Energy Project, Kate Beyer, BVWA Public Information Officer. And I don't know why it's not on my agenda that I have in my hand, but my apologies. It's in the agenda that's present.
Hi, good
Hello,
evening.
how are you?
Hello.
Welcome to the council meeting.
Well, thank you. Again, my name is Kate Beyer. I'm the Public Information Officer for Victor Valley Wastewater. I introduced myself to the council, I think, a few months back, and I invited you to our Omnivore ribbon cutting ceremony September 26th from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. And I'm here today on behalf of VVWRA to explain a little bit more about the benefits of this project, not only for VVWRA, but Victorville, the high desert, and the wastewater industry as a whole. Okay, so let me make sure I can use this. Okay, so who are we? We began operating in 1981, and we were originally formed by the Mojave Water Agency to help meet the requirements of the Federal Clean Water Act. We currently treat over 12.5 million gallons of water a day, and we operate as a joint powers authority. Here you can see, in the very center is our new Omnivore project, and to the right, those two large circular cement structures are our two new digesters. Okay, pictured to the right are 3 digesters. These were actually slated to be decommissioned in 2008 because of the 2 new digesters that were built. Each of those new digesters has a capacity equal to all 3 of those. So the smaller digesters were slated for decommission, essentially leaving them to waste away. But this wasteful concept bothered our general manager, Logan Olds. Do you take your used car and drive it off a cliff when you're finished with it after buying a new car? Absolutely not. You give your old one to the kids, you sell it, you donate it. It still has value to it, and you pay to receive that value. So Logan asked the question, how can we repurpose this investment to add value to our agency? To the right, you see our new digesters. And to the left, you see methane being flared off, which affects our air quality. However, anything that burns is energy. This is money being wasted. How much do we spend on natural gas and electricity to power our plant annually? $1.4 million. Why not harness this energy source that we're otherwise wasting? Reuse and repurpose. What's going to happen after you digest your food? Well, you're going to eventually need to use the restroom, in which case you'll be sending us energy packets, which will reuse and repurpose to intentionally generate methane, eliminating the need to use non-renewable energy sources. This is a $2.6 million project. How much did our rates need to increase? Not a single penny. We are trying to recover from a bad economy. So what has America always done? Look to innovation and collaboration. We pursued a public-private partnership with Anergia. They brought us the $2.6 million investment through a California Energy Commission Innovative Technology Grant, then added an additional $600,000. We only had to add a decommissioned digester, an old used car. This project will potentially save the agency $9 million over the 20-year contract, significantly offsetting rate increases, which gets passed to our member agencies and, of course, to our ratepayers. So the idea behind this is the stone soup story. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this, the idea goes like this. An old beggar comes into a poor town, and he begins to boil water in a pot in the middle of the town, and he throws in a stone. Well, out comes a villager and asks, "What are you up to?" And he goes, "Well, I'm making stone soup, but it tastes a whole lot better with broccoli." And the villager says, "Well, I don't have any broccoli, but I do have carrots." So he adds the carrots, and out comes another villager, and out comes another villager. And before too long, you have a meal for everyone. And that's the concept that we're using here. Pictured here is our competition. How many other facilities our size are energy neutral in the world? Only one, the one pictured here in Denmark. There are only 5 other facilities that, to my knowledge, are energy neutral. It's very exciting to be part of a small agency and yet accomplish such a major feat. So again, pictured here you can see the value added through our Omnivore project, through using an otherwise decommissioned digester. You can see all of these pictured here. We have diesel fuel, biochar, electricity, all the other products that can be produced through these digesters. And again, that's additional revenue streams that offset user fees in the future. I'd like to close by letting you know, next time you're asked what is so great about the high desert, be sure to tell them that we have the most innovative treatment facility right here in Victorville. Again, I'd like to extend the invitation to all of you as well as the general public to attend our ribbon cutting ceremony September 26th from 9 a.m. until 11. We've also opened this up to sponsors and vendors as well. In fact, Energia, our partner company, has graciously decided to pay for the event. So that is some fabulous news. And with that, I conclude. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I also brought some flyers here, and there's flyers in the front for anyone in the general public that would like to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you very much. Any comments from council members? Sorry, I missed that item. At this point on the agenda, we are at the public comment section. Public comments, items of interest to the public. I have 2 cards. First one is Al Catillo. You could come up, please. Al Catillo.
I can't hear what they're saying either.
What?
Getting around a lot of explosions. I can't hear what anybody says up there, and I can't hear what people say when they get here because I have been around a lot of explosions.
Okay.
Anyway, one of the biggest reasons I came here is I want to thank the police department up here. I think we got the greatest police department in San Bernardino County for the amount of guys we got working. They cleaned my neighborhood up, and my neighborhood was being robbed blind. And they do that around Christmas time. And these cops got out and they worked their butts off, and when we called them, they were there. And they get calls while they're trying to do one thing, they're getting a call to go do another thing. These guys are damn good cops. They got a damn good leader, a good captain who you would want to work for, even if he didn't tell you to. He's that good a guy. But the cops in this city are great cops, and they do a damn good job. And I don't think they get enough appreciation. The other thing I want to talk about, are there any developers here?
I don't have any idea.
Any developers?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, who can I have fun with here about the lot sizes? Anybody, a 10,000 acre is a quarter of an acre. That's 4 houses per acre. If that ain't enough, tell them to go somewhere else and build their houses. When they build their houses, before they build them, for about 2 weeks, they put pipes all along the 5 or 10 acres, and every so often they have a thing where it squirts the water out, and they run them for 24 hours a day for about 2 weeks. How much water do you think they're going to use? And then we don't need any more people up here. This place is so overcrowded now, it's ridiculous. Driving around here is like driving around in L.A. without having all the fun you can have in L.A. I mean, it's really tough up here now getting on the road. And there's so many accidents up here. My insurance went up $60. And I called them. I said, why? They said, because you got so many accidents over there. You got way too many people up here now. You got 100,000 people. That was the goal. You got 100,000. Let it go. And if you do let them build, the first money from the DIF fee should go for 8 or 9 more policemen, and not even thinking about spending the money anywhere else. Because if you can't protect the people up here, you can't protect the city. And your main job is to protect the city, to protect us. That's what counts.
Thank you all.
You're beautiful, Angela.
The next card, that wasn't for the record. Never mind. The next card is David Reynolds. He would come up and address the council, please.
Mayor Cox, City Council members, I'm David Reynolds. I am a resident of Victorville, and I just have a question. Are the red light cameras still going to be taken down and turned off in 2015? And if they are, do you know what month?
You know what?
The red light cameras, are they going to be turned off and taken down in 2015 as scheduled? And if they are, do you know what month?
Mr. Mayor, I know we don't normally respond to these, but I can at least answer that question if you'd like.
Okay.
I think it's May or June of 2015 the contract expires. No decision has been made on whether or not they would come down or not. That's a decision to be made at that time or shortly there before by the council that's sitting at that time.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards from anyone. Does anyone come here for the purpose of addressing the council? If so, now is the time to do that under this public comment section. You do have a card. Okay. Give your name, please.
Jamie Knudsen.
Okay.
And I'm here, I missed it, but I was here to speak on the item A1, the appeal hearing.
Yes.
And I'm a property owner within the 300 feet of the Teasers nightclub, and I just wanted to come and support, revoking of that license. But,
yeah, if since this was an item on the agenda, although we don't normally engage individuals, I'm sorry you missed that, but almost everyone involved in that wanted it continued.
That's correct, Mayor Cox. That item was opened and continued and will be considered again on the September 16th meeting. However, if you'd like, we can incorporate your comments in support of the revocation, I understand it, of the CUP as part of the public record.
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? If not, we have next item E3, E2, report from the city manager. Do you have any reports, Mr.?
Just one item. It's unfortunate that our first meeting in August always falls on National Night Out. It creates a conflict. National Night Out is at Mesa Linda Park. It's happening right now from 6 to 8. Should anybody want to leave this meeting and head straight over there, you may be able to catch at least a little piece of it before it shuts down at 8 o'clock. I think next year I'm going to recommend that we actually cancel this first meeting in August so that the council can finally attend it, as I know you all would like to.
What is it? Where is it at?
It's National Night Out. It's sponsored by the police department, sort of a neighborhood building, community building event to try to get people engaged in the community, prevent crimes, and it's a big party, really.
I know, but I didn't hear the location, and
Yeah,
you said
sorry,
if you
it's
want to go over there. I know where it's at.
Mesa Linda Park, which is on Mesa Linda Avenue, immediately north of La Mesa and immediately south of Luna. So in between Luna and La Mesa, on Mesa Linda, is where it's happening.
Okay. Thank you, Dad. Any other reports from the city manager? Reports from the city council. Start on my right, Mr. Kennedy.
Just one thing, and this is a staff request, Doug. I was at this conference, I mentioned it in Denver, a bunch of CPAs talking about a bunch of things that don't interest most anybody here. But one of the things we spent a fair amount of time talking about is an accounting standard that's going to come into play for all municipalities across the country on June 30, 2015. For the first time ever in the history of municipalities, we're going to be required to record our unfunded pension liabilities. Businesses in the for-profit world have had to do this 15 years ago, but government didn't want to. But next year we're going to have to, and my understanding is the year after that we're going to have to record our unfunded OPEB, post-employment benefits. In other words, all the health insurance we promised to pay for employees, retired employees, for the rest of their life. Two potentially very large liabilities and going to have a huge impact on lots and lots of cities. And here's what I'm concerned about. It's going to hit our financial statements next June, and suddenly it's going to get a lot of attention. We know today that this liability exists. I don't know what it is. We know it's there. We know it's going to hit our statements. I'd like to know well in advance what kind of thing we're looking at, how big the number is, how it's going to spread out for us, and I'd like to know what both of those are, and I'd like to prepare the public for. I don't want anybody to think that we suddenly turned the city upside down by $50 million.
Yeah, the OPEB liability is not something that we've calculated. But the pension liability is something that we calculate. I believe it's every 2 years. We do the report, and it's reported as part of the audit, but it's not incorporated
disclosed
into
not
the numbers. So it's
recorded.
in there, but it's not in there as part of the city's total net worth, to use a private term. So the number is in there, and we can get that to you pretty easily, and we'll definitely let the council know ahead of time what the report says for next year when we do have to actually record it and essentially book it against our total assets.
Is there a way to do that as a presentation at a council meeting where the public could have a hope of understanding how it's going to affect us?
We absolutely can. We can even do a press release to hopefully influence the way it's handled in the press, and I'll talk with the other city managers as well, since we're all going to be impacted by it, as well as all public agencies, to perhaps do a joint press release so that it's explained for the entire Victor Valley public.
And it could be that the other one that's much bigger, I don't know if it's bigger or not, but it's one that is largely unknown, and I don't believe it is disclosed at all, is that obligation for post-employment benefits, the health insurance primarily, that goes on for life plus the spouse's life.
I suspect it's a much smaller number, but it is unreported at this point.
Well, I'd like to get that information out in the public where people are prepared for it before it lands. That's all. Thanks.
Councilmember Vice.
I don't have anything.
Councilmember McEachran, Mayor Pro Tem McEachran.
Nothing this evening.
I have 3 items. I'm not sure when the staff is going to be considering design standards. I got 3 or 4 calls, but I had 3 items. Number 1, can the city require tinting on all windows that face the sun, either east or west? It doesn't have to be a colored tinting. I did get a call. I went over. It's clear tinting. It was unbelievable how much heat it blocked. although it didn't seem to block looking at it. I indicated that, as far as I know, we don't have those kind of regulations. We don't do that. It's kind of interesting to look at. Other cities have design standards that the windows are away from the sun, morning and evening, especially the evening. We haven't done that either. The next item is I got a call from a lady that was laughing that had called, and this was something that happened during the winter. She turned on the hot water in the bathroom, and it ran and ran, and she finally shut it off, and she called the electrician or the gas, I forget who she called. And the only problem was that it was wintertime, and the pipes run through the attic, and the hot water tank is in the garage, which was the farthest end of the house that you could be away from the bathroom. And she was wondering if anybody had ever thought about or calculated the amount of gas that's used in heating the water that goes through the attic, which is ice-cold pipes, and the amount of water you have to use before. If we're interested in saving water and we're interested in saving energy, why don't we require the heater be placed closest proximity to where it's going to be used? Interesting concept. Interesting concept because she had lived in an area where if the bathrooms or showers were located a certain distance from the hot water heater, then they had the instant heat. So that it was automatic when you turned the faucet on, it had instant heat. So the last item then, which was an item, was we had a track several years ago. I will talk to the city manager later. And we had an awful lot of the individuals who complained that the air conditioners didn't work, but they did. And what the contractor did is that a 2-ton or a 3-ton or a 4-ton, you can go up to so many square feet, and so they had just got a few feet under so that they didn't have to go to the next higher air condition, which caused the air conditioners to run a lot. And since this is a desert and the code doesn't specifically require the difference in the desert and the heat, can we adopt a standard that will require the builders to put in adequate size air conditioners so that they don't run 24/7 and use a lot of energy? Yes, if you put in a bigger air conditioner, it cools the house quicker and actually saves energy. Those are items that, since we talk about design standards, I don't think they are, but they're certainly for efficiency and effectiveness something for staff to look at, and then we'll have more discussion on that later. I don't have anything else at this time. Any questions or comments from the staff? If not, that concludes this meeting. Thank you very much for those attended.
Mayor Cox, this meeting should be adjourned to Thursday, August 14th at 6 p.m. for a joint meeting with the town of Apple Valley and the cities of Adelanto and Hesperia at the Apple Valley Conference Center.
Should be adjourned, but why?
That it's for the presentation of the findings on the proposed JPA for police and fire services.
I do have that on my agenda, and thank you very much for the reminding. So the meeting is adjourned until August 14th at the designated location. Do we have to meet here and adjourn, or can we adjourn it at this point too? We can adjourn it to Apple Valley from here?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Anything else I forgot? I guess not. Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.